Greetings and good Friday morning. Once again, another Red Friday. Remember, everyone deployed. It is April, I need to get that right, 28th, 2023. Still the third decade of the 21st century. If for any reason you're new to my channel, you don't know who I am. If you're on Rumble, my name is Dan Blackwell. If you're on YouTube, my name is my channel name. With that being said, I always open with that to sort of highlight the fact that it is indeed the third decade of the 21st century, and to sort of hyper expose where people thought we would be as a society, as a civilization, versus where we're actually at and what we're dealing with. Furthermore, before I get into my own individual topics, a promise made is a promise kept, right? So without further ado, I have two comments to my videos. One from an individual on Rumble, and then of course my one loyal viewer on YouTube. Either way, not a problem. So Alberto Benton, or Burton, I'm sorry, I think it's Burton. My apologies. Responding to my Uvalde video. Now my Uvalde video was posted earlier this year, I believe earlier this year. Give me a second to find out. One moment, and I'll tell you. When did I post that? Believe it or not, I gotta keep everything. Alright, so that was not this year, that was last year. 1 second. Where was it? I'm pretty sure that was 2022. Give me a second, I'll find it. Alright, June 6th, roger that. So I originally posted that video on YouTube on the 6th of June 2022, but you recently just saw it on Rumble. Alberto, you'll have to tell me if you're strictly on Rumble only. If you wouldn't mind, I'd appreciate that. But without further ado, this is your comment to that video. Too many verifiable lies, too many improbable scenarios, too many examples of absurd behaviors from so many of the parties involved. The left always has us on the defense, and they create the scenarios to do so. Please examine the videos. You may be surprised. Alberto, I haven't seen the videos yet. I promise I'll watch them, because if they're intriguing, obviously I'm going to want to watch them. And then after the video links you posted, you commented, the implication of the last video is that there was foreknowledge of the event. The sobering question is, why do they so badly want to take away the weapons? Once the answer is realized, one sees that they will do anything. So without watching the videos, Alberto, I'm going to go ahead and make an assumption, and I'm well aware of the problems with making assumptions. I'm going to go ahead and assume that the videos are basically talking about, I don't want to say conspiracy, but I've even talked about it myself, where if there's something going on where the left is going to potentially look bad, like the Hunter Biden laptop, or how Biden handled Afghanistan or whatnot, conveniently another event will happen. So it's like, okay, great, move all the attention over here. And I think I've posed the question, is it possible, because I don't really rewatch my videos that often, or if at all, I posed the question, is it possible that the left has sleeper cells in waiting when they have a crisis going on that is potentially going to jeopardize their power base, jeopardize their moral standing, their what's the word I'm looking for, like their, not like their credit score, but like their social value? Then like they unleash these sleeper cells. It's not impossible. I mean, it's probably a bridge too far, but I'm guessing these videos you posted may have something to do with that. As far as the guns go, if you go down that rabbit hole, and we exercise the examples of other civilizations, modern civilizations, or in the last 100 years or so, basically every entity in power, whether it's a political faction or whatnot, that has disarmed its citizens, has eventually risen to a form of tyrannical power, where they are the only ones that can literally enforce whatever the hell they want. And I'm of the firm belief that the Democratic Party was one of the first political parties to rise to power in the post-revolutionary era, which they formed, and then they equally and opposite at the same time formed the Confederacy, seceded from the Union, initiated the Civil War, and obviously wanted to pretty much do things their own way. Admittedly, I don't know historically if the Confederacy literally wanted to draw a line and like, look, you guys do you, we're gonna do us, where we would not be a United States of America, but we would be literally a North and a South. I don't know if that was their intention. So when they did the attack on Fort Sumter in South Carolina, if their initial intention was to try to kick the Union soldiers out, you know, that's probably a little bit of speculation, and I'm sure I could probably find it on Google Scholar. But going back to that particular reason, I've never ever been a fan of the Democratic Party, and I've always thought that the Democratic Party was, for all intents and purposes, just flat out anti-American and anti our way of life. So I would not put it beyond the Democratic Party to want to disarm the citizenry for the sole purpose of potentially putting forth a new way of life, a new order of doing things in the United States, where because the citizens no longer have the ability to defend themselves. I'm not a gun nut per se. I'm a gun enthusiast, but also I don't have like random guns that have no purpose. The guns I have, the firearms I have, are meant to serve a purpose. Like, I've actually put significant thought in, and yeah, I put significant thought into the platforms I own. To just give you an idea, I have a couple of ARs. One is chambered in .300 Blackout, the other one is chambered in .762 by .39. Not a fan of the AK platform, so I like the AR platform. I chose those specifically because I can also get slower moving rounds that in the event that I need to defend myself, there's a greater probability that if I do actually connect with my target, I may not necessarily be shooting at such a high load that the bullet is going to continue to carry on and hit multiple unintentional targets. So I chose those for a reason. Same with shotguns, pistols, etc. But I think, in all honesty, the whole point is that the overall long-term goal is to disarm the citizens so that the citizens can no longer defend themselves from the government becoming too tyrannical. That being said, that's another reason why I'm a firearms enthusiast, because I want the government to feel fearful of trying to take rights away from me. And then, of course, Stace, my other loyal viewer on YouTube, well, my only loyal viewer, sorry, Alberto, I don't want to necessarily give you characteristics and traits that you're not volunteering for. But Stace, my one and only actual loyal viewer who does take the time to comment, you had said in regards to my last video that I posted, I think that it wasn't so much the title, but the title and the timing of the topic, since it was a hot topic. So if nobody's tracking this, in my last video I referenced the fact that I made a comment. I had made a video pertaining to Jensen Ackles when he was on the Inside of You podcast with Michael Rosenbaum, talking about his time on Dark Angel and some of those experiences and how, you know, there could be multiple explanations, and then talking about Joss Whedon, who was receiving a lot of vitriol because of Ray Fisher, who played Cyborg in the recent DC universe movies, and Charisma Carpenter, who apparently ended things with Joss Whedon on a bad relationship, I guess, from her time on Angel, specifically with her having a child and whatnot. So I basically made a video saying, could a lot of different things have been going on? Can two different people feel a certain way and have their opinions, and yet other people not share those opinions? But at the same time, because of this cancel culture, Me Too craziness going on, it seems like a lot of people are like, yeah, and it's like, well, there's nothing wrong with saying, you know, that may have been their experience, and I'm terribly sorry if that was, That was not my experience, and I'm proud of the work I did. I'm proud of the work I did with that person. I did not have a negative experience with that person, but it just seemed, and for whatever reason, I created a title, and that title, for whatever reason, got put into other people's feeds, and well over 2,000 people have viewed it on YouTube. It did generate a lot of attention for a short period of time, as would happen when I expressed some of my thoughts and opinions on a particular subject, specifically trans athletes, men transitioning to women to compete in women's arenas of competition. That a lot of the people that had gotten to my channel as a result of that Joss Whedon Jensen Ackles video eventually devolved into their base selves, which is hardcore lefties, cancel culture mentality, not wanting to have conversations with people they disagree with, but preferring to isolate themselves to their echo chambers. So, you know, just to catch anybody up to that, especially if I've got new viewers on Rumble. Which, by the way, moments ago, I just finished uploading the last of my content to Rumble. So now every video, minus the one that YouTube took down, and I can't seem to find the raw material. All of my previous content from YouTube is now on Rumble. I apologize if it shows up in the order that I uploaded it, but I've tried to put the dates in the description so you can have an idea as to when these videos came out. Stace, you go on to say, but hey, it's what brought me to your channel. Hubby and I celebrate 24 years this July. Stace, congrats. 24 years, if we're the same age or close in age, I'm guessing you feel as though you got married at an appropriate time. I was 29 when I got married, and I felt as though it was a good time. It was a good enough time. I was ready. You know, I'd more or less been there, done that. You know, I was done being a frat boy or whatnot, and I was at an appropriate time in my life to settle down and get married. Ironically, I've known my wife since 1993, and we both agreed that even though we knew each other and we still wound up together in the long run, that we couldn't have been like childhood sweethearts, you know, high school sweethearts getting married post-high school, that we had too much growing up to do separately of ourselves in order to get married. So there's that. I've been going for about 12 plus minutes now, so I wanted to try to take a few minutes, and I apologize if this goes long. Hopefully, maybe I've got a decent enough voice to make good background noise, so you don't have to necessarily watch but listen. I've been kind of inundated with a lot of different content, you know, where there's been some recent stuff with Eddie Gallagher and Dan Crenshaw and whatnot, Dave Landau with Steven Crowder, and various other things. And, you know, my daughter and I were having a conversation, and we were talking about, you know, people in her social group, and basically I had to try to explain to her, and I hope I did a good enough job. Maybe one day she'll join me on the channel and she can tell me whether or not I do a good job communicating fatherly wisdom. And I was trying to explain to her that as we progress through life, multiple things can be true at the same time. All right, and as I think of these different examples I just quoted, and I think about what she was dealing with and is kind of still sort of dealing with, you know, I tried to explain, most psychologists and sociologists have to study this in order to get to their degree and potentially practice. And it's basically a very simple concept. Like attracts like. Birds of a feather flock together. People who have things in common gravitate towards each other and form groups, form cliques, and in some way, shape, or form can sometimes isolate themselves from others and potentially inadvertently or purposefully treat others negatively. And I was like, just look at what's going on right now, left and right, conservative, liberal. I mean, my God. You know, the unfortunate truth about human beings is like attracts like. Birds of a feather flock together. People who have things in common will gravitate towards each other. The real test of maturity, and whether it's in maturity, intelligence, various other adjectives that I may have a hard time finding in this moment, because if you can't tell, I am as raw as you can get. I don't have a production crew. I don't have a production team. I mean, I'm by myself. I might as well just hold the phone out, right? the ultimate sign of being clear-minded, rational, so on and so forth, is having the clarity to identify when you may not agree with or get along with somebody, but at the end of the day, do you really need to go out of your way to adversely affect them? What is it about them that, you know, do you need to go out of your way? And in some cases, the answer may be yes. But, and I learned this from my time in the military. There were people I didn't get along with, various ranks and whatnot, and there may have been opportunities where I could have slandered them. I could have, you know, made suggestions about their character and whatnot. And I was like, you know what? There was an opportunity once, and I was in a high-level meeting, and essentially, I was put on the spot for something, and I was like, I told him flat, I was like, you know, I asked permission to speak freely to the commanding officer, and he allowed me, and I was like, sir, I personally don't get along with this person. I personally don't like this person. It's not somebody I would want to hang out with on Libo. I would prefer not to work with this person, but I also don't have any proof or any evidence that the individual is not earning their paycheck. I don't have any proof or evidence that the person is not doing the job that ultimately you and your subordinate leaders require of that person. So to sit here and try to speak negatively about a person, you know, based on their ability to perform a task, just because I don't like them, I don't think is appropriate. And I feel like we do this all too often. We don't like somebody. We don't like the way they do something. At the end of the day, we never take the time to stop and think, well, do we just dislike them? Do we just dislike the way that they achieve the results? You know, and are we actually taking the time to think about, if we pursue this to the ultimate conclusion, is that the desired result? You know, adversely affect this person to the point where now they can no longer earn a living? Now they can no longer provide for their family? Because sometimes their family is just innocent in all of this. And I was like, if there's been no infraction of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, I was like, I think the smartest thing to do is, if it's a personality conflict, find a way around it or move the person. And I was like, only a couple times in my 20 years have I actually seen two people, you know, somebody identify, hey, look, I am not going to give you a fair shake, and that is not fair to you. So I think the best thing we can do is relocate you where I no longer have any influence over you, and therefore my personal feelings about you will not cloud my judgment. Now, and it was that one point in time where I didn't have many of them, and I'm being completely honest, but it was that one moment where I was belligerently proud of myself for having that moment, because it was also received extremely well and with high praise. And I didn't just make it up on my own. I mean, a lot of this came from experience. And I think about some of the things that are going on, right? And how, I forget, somebody said it, but it's something to do with the fact that, I think it was Jensen Ackles said it, or somebody else, but sensationalism is what sells. Drama is what sells. You know, so like recently with Dave Landau and Steven Crowder, for those who are in that circle, there's a disagreement and they parted ways. And as I'm listening to all this, and I'm listening to Dave Landau on Michael Malice, part of me is thinking, okay, well, Steven has created a business, he's created a brand, and he's got people working with him, if not for him. And it's like, well, how much of this is his direct interaction with Steven Crowder, and how much of this is a direct interaction with people working on Steven's behalf, where there may be some filtration going on? And we all know the game. If you grew up playing telephone, I like hot dogs, and by the time it goes through 30 different people, it's changed. Now, I like hot dogs is pretty simple. I like hot dogs. I mean, if you want to break hot dogs into two words, I like hot dogs, it's either 3 or 4 words. That's not hard to remember. But like when you try to say a sentence and it goes around 30 times, I think we learned that lesson in elementary school, the telephone game. It'll come back different than what it was. And I was using all of this to explain to my daughter, you know, as it pertains to her situation, you know, people change. People are the sum total of their experiences. People are the sum total of their decisions that influence their experience as to how other people respond. People can change. People can grow apart. it's okay. And I applauded her for her sense of loyalty, but I was like, at the same time, you're not a bad person just because you grew apart from somebody. You're not a bad person just because you no longer share anything. And I explained to her, I was like, look, you know, even in the military, there were cliques, there were ideologues, you know, people who grouped together, and some handled themselves well, some handled themselves not so well. And it's like, it's part of that. It's one of those things about the military I was not pleased with. Like when people thanked me for my service during the first few years I was out, especially when I lived in the greater Raleigh area, I had a problem with it because I was like, my God, if you only knew what I knew, if you could, you know. And I don't know why I was so not fixated, but I don't know why I always looked at it in those terms, like, you know, you're thanking me, but you don't know if I was a good Marine, a good service member. You're thanking me, but you don't know if I was really worthy of praise. You know, because just like there were times when I saw people getting praised that were they were not deserving of praise. So, you know, I had to explain this, and I'm kind of curious to hear from anybody else who's had a chance to watch this for 21 minutes now. Aside from all my responding to comments, I'm kind of curious if you've noticed that too. You know, if you can actually take a moment in your life and think back, and it's like, have I been part of a clique, or have I been adversely affected by a clique, or have I watched a clique perform in a manner that was, what's the word I'm looking for, less than desirable, you know, performing in a fashion that was negative. And, you know, again, as I used certain examples to my daughter, you know, I explained certain things like, yeah, you know, multiple things can be true at the same time too, you know. Not only can you grow apart, but different people can have different experiences. And I was like, one of the problems we have is if a person has a bad experience, are they actively seeking out people who equally had bad experiences to adversely affect somebody? And I posed that question, like when it came to Charisma Carpenter or Ray Fisher or anybody else for that matter. I don't know these people, so I don't want to attribute things to them. Okay? I still thoroughly enjoy Charisma Carpenter whenever she's on anything. I think she's gorgeous. I loved her on Buffy. I loved her on Angel, and I love it when she's in anything else. I'd like to see her succeed. I had zero problems or issues with Ray Fisher's portrayal of Cyborg, and I wish him well, and I hope he continues to be Cyborg. But I've had zero interaction with Joss Whedon. And I'm trying to make an example here, so I'm not trying to hyper-focus on this topic. But I was like, is it possible other people could have had a positive experience? Other people could have had a negative experience. And it's like, well, can these people recognize these people? And can these people recognize these people? Can the people that had a positive experience recognize the people that had a negative experience? But you know what? I don't share your feelings, but I'm not saying you didn't experience what you experienced. I just didn't share your experience. I don't feel the same way. And then vice versa. You know what? You're right. I had a negative experience. There could have been any number of reasons why. But it did deeply affect me. It has adversely affected me. And, you know, I just want to be able to vent about it. I don't want to necessarily cause unnecessary harm to the individual or individuals that I had a negative experience with. But, you know, to me, that's an idealized situation where everybody's being rational, right? But going back to this video I made and my daughter at the same time, I was trying to ask the question, is it possible for all things? And yet, is it possible that there's a better way to do it? I honestly felt that in this particular instance, when it came to Joss, people were trying to cancel him. Now, granted, he did an interview, and whether he was high, stoned, I know there's a redundant things, but you could be high on other things. He was under the influence of something, I don't know, that Vox? I can't remember who it was, but the interview he did was not flattering. But then Jensen also was like, hey, look, she had a lot of stuff going on at the time. I would eventually find this out later. You know, we've reconciled, we're cool, we're buds. It is what it is, it's water under the bridge. But at that time, it was an adverse situation. And he was not trying to do anything, but people were taking the sound bites and they were trying to blow this up. And I was like, you see what I'm saying here? You know, there was so much more that what Jensen said on the interview with Michael Rosenbaum, but people are taking a snippet and they're trying to blow it up because that's the world we live in. And, you know, aside from that tirade, you know, I was explaining to my daughter that, yeah, you know, multiple different experiences can be had by all. And it's like, look, you know, when it comes to individuals in your life, you're not required to like anybody. You're not required to want to spend time with anybody. I was like, all I request of you is that you're polite until you feel justified in being impolite. Try politeness first. If that fails, then it's time to escalate. But ultimately, try to be a calm, rational human being. You know, be polite at first until it's time not to be polite. And I was like, I can't tell you when that is. Ultimately, you have to know your own threshold. And unfortunately, you know, it's part of growing up. You know, you'll have to be the one to look back on how you handled the situation and determine for yourself if it was right or wrong, and use that experience when you potentially have kids of your own. But here's the deal. I've been ranting enough, for crying out loud. It's 26 minutes. I am so sorry. I don't care if you like, subscribe, hit the rumble, hit the notification bell, any of that stuff. All I care about is that people comment and that we have these conversations, whether we agree with each other, whether we disagree with each other, whether we're somewhere in the middle. You know, I completely understand not all of us are in a position where we can pay for services, we can pay for our comments to be heard, we can pay for recognition. You know, I get it. You know, even Steven Crowder is like, hey, I understand this, and I believe that maybe he understands, but at the same time, I'm not necessarily in a position to give everybody money. Maybe here and there I can give somebody some money, but they want these subscription fees. And it's like, no, I'd much rather on a case-by-case basis, and maybe that's where super chats are handy. All right? Maybe that's where these super chats are handy, but I'm going on and on. The point being is we are the little guys, and if you do take the time to respond, I promise I will read, react, and respond to your comments. And if you do, you're awesome. Appreciate you. Stay safe out there. Till next time.